Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fordson High School. I am honored to stand here before you on this very special day. Please stand. Let me begin by introducing the color guard who will lead us in the presentation of colors. From the Dearborn Allied War Veterans Council, Mike Bergen, Pete Barillo, Connor Coleman, George Harvey, Tom Hull, Frank Palacio, Lenny Patek, and John Young. Thank you. Now, I would like to recognize the Fordson Choir, led by teacher Matt Lohr, as they perform the national anthem. Thank you. You may all have a seat, please. Thank you. I would like to acknowledge some special guests in attendance today. Would all representatives of the armed forces, past and present, please rise? Can we give them a round of applause, please? Thank you. I'd also like to represent our school board members. Please stand if you're here in attendance. President Marion Bazzi, Vice President Michael Mee, Secretary Mary Polishikoff, Treasurer Hussein Berry, Trustee James Thorpe, Trustee Fadwa Hamoud, and Trustee Miss Mary Lane. Thank you for attending our ceremony today. I would also like to recognize our city council members. Susan DeBaja, Tom Teflowski, Michael Solerini, Brian O'Donnell, David Bazzi, Robert Abraham, and Mark Trushanian. Thank you to our special guest, Sean Green, Commander of Dearborn Allied War Veteran Council, Hussein Berry, Dearborn School Board Member, John Ruslowski, Decorated Korean War Veteran and Dearborn Veteran of the Year, 2005. Ms. Lisa Lark, former Dearborn Public School teacher and published author. Dr. Glenn Maleyko, Dearborn School Superintendent. And a special thank you to Mrs. Jill Choco as well, our executive director. A special thank you goes to our featured speaker, Mr. Mayor John O'Reilly. He would like to say a couple words.
I think it's really important to have this event here, and you know the 1,800 the number of people from this school who went before you, and who we are now recognizing, and we're setting aside this time to remember them and to thank them for giving the ultimate sacrifice, their life, on behalf of our freedom. And it's really hard because right now, your young people, just as they were, sitting in the seats just as they did, they had plans just as you did. They knew what they wanted to do, what they were going to do for the summer when school got out, what they wanted to do after, plans that they were making just as you're making these plans. And so when they actually got called to service or volunteered to service, they had to put all of that aside and go and serve this nation and serve all of us, whether we were there at the time and you were not, but you benefited from their service. So they put aside their personal lives in order to serve their country. And as things turned out, they never did get to pursue any of those things that they thought about. But they were just like you. They sat where you were. Now, they would have never thought of the technology. Many of them, if you showed them what you're carrying in your hand or what you're doing with the internet and you know, those kinds of things, that would be a surprise to them. But they were the teenagers and young adults of their period, and they were reflective of their period just as you are reflective of the time you live in. And that's why it's really important that we remind ourselves that we had people like that, people who stood up, who made that ultimate sacrifice, who said, I want to make sure that democracy continues to be part of the American enterprise, how we are, who we are, and what we do. And so even if you don't agree with some of the politics that go on or anything else, the fact that we have to protect ourselves from losing the opportunities that are given to us in this country as free people who can make our own free choices. And it's a fight. And it's not just a fight in the military sense, it's a fight even in the political sense of things that we have to be involved, and we have to care about things, and we have to participate in the American lifestyle. Meaning vote. If you're old enough and you're going to make sure you're voting, make sure your voice is held. That's one way we respect these people. If they died to make sure that we have the freedom, that you have rights, then exercise those rights. Participate as you can. That's one way of honoring them. You know, I think, you know, sometimes we think, well, we're having a parade and it's a celebration. But the parade is really just to show how much respect that everybody in this community, no matter what part of the community they're from, everybody is appreciating the sacrifice they made. That's what it's about. That's what this weekend is about. And so we want you to think about that, and we want you to make sure that you're thinking, how do I participate? How do I honor them by making sure that I'm part of the democracy that they fought and died for? And I think if that's the way we look at it, we'll do much better. We'll see that we really need to come together and stay solidified around who we are, and that everybody in this country, everyone, has the same rights and same opportunities, and we can't let that go. So again, that's what this is about. These were young people who sat here, who went through your school, just as you're going now, and who had the same dreams and aspirations for themselves, and they never got to realize those. So we want you to make sure that you realize yours, and that you do everything you can to make sure that you're helping democracy thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. I'd now like for our choir to sing God Bless America. Thank you. I would now like to call to the podium our Superintendent, Glenn Maleyko.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here and for this event to honor those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Before I say a few words, I do want to make mention of a few individuals. I know our board has been recognized through Trustee Treasurer Barry, who's here representing the board, and I know we have other dignitaries, including the mayor, that have been recognized. We also have our PTA Council President here, Nephilah Hyder. I have Communications Director David Mustonen and former board trustee Roxanne McDonald. I always like to recognize them because they've contributed to the success of Dearborn schools. I want to also obviously thank the veterans and all those who are here. I want to welcome the students and thank the student staff and all the honored guests. Time has an interesting way of influencing our behaviors, both good and bad. No one wakes up and decides to gain 20 or 30 pounds. Rather, over time, we tend to pick up bad habits like eating the wrong food or not exercising. The same can be said when it comes to important celebrations that commemorate significant events and people in our history. We have allowed time to turn these important days into an excuse for a good sale or a marketing gimmick. That's unfortunate, especially when we are talking about a day as important as today or this week, Memorial Day week. It's also kind of ironic because Memorial Day didn't begin with any big fanfare or official declaration. It was started by people who would gather to place flowers on the graves and honor those military personnel who died during the Civil War. They called it Decoration Day, and it was a good habit that caught on and over time kept growing and growing. After World War I, the holiday evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars, and then much later, the day became known as Memorial Day and was moved to the last Monday in May. In November, we have a day to pay tribute and thank our veterans, those who have served in the armed forces, but today is different. Today we pause with reverence as this day honors those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and gave their life while serving in the military. We owe it to those fallen heroes and their family members to never forget the true meaning of Memorial Day. Many who died while serving in the armed forces were at the very start of their life. A lot similar in age to each of you. They had plans, dreams, and hopes like many of you. They were looking forward to a future filled with family and friends. They were the next police officers, scientists, engineers, and teachers. My own grandfather, who passed away in 2012, served in the U.S. Navy in the Pacific Ocean off the shores of Japan in World War II. I heard many stories from my grandfather, who was very proud that he served his country. I'm fortunate I was able to hear those stories firsthand, directly from my grandfather. On Memorial Day, we must also remember the families who were never able to hear those stories firsthand because their loved ones were lost while serving their country. Let them know that their family member is appreciated and remembered. Let them know that the ultimate sacrifice, the price that was paid for our continued freedom, will not be forgotten. This Memorial Day weekend, enjoy the day off, spend time with friends and family, grab a blanket or a lawn chair, and make your way to the big parade. But most important, continue the good habit and take the time to remember the mothers, daughters, sons, and fathers who served our country and gave their life defending our freedom. Thank you, and may God bless our fallen, our veterans, our active military, and this great nation, the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Maleyko. We will now participate in the moving of the wreath. Thank you. I would now like to call to the stage Lisa Lark, former Dearborn Public School teacher and author of the book, All They Left Behind, Legacy of Men and Women of the Wall.
Thank you. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment to recognize the names that are on the back of your program. If you could open your program and flip it to the back if you have it. There are 118 names that Fordson lost during the conflicts, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. Each of these names has a mother and a father. They had siblings, they had brothers and sisters, they had teammates, and they had friends. So as we're going through this ceremony this morning, please remember that each of these names was a person who had dreams and hopes just as you did before they lost their lives in the service to our country. The United States entered World War II in 1941 after it had been underway for 2 years. More than 16 million U.S. troops served all over the world, in North Africa, in Europe, and in the Pacific. Long tours resulted in soldiers being overseas for years on end. By the time the war ended in 1945, there were nearly 406,000 U.S. troops deceased, with 251 of them from Dearborn. Estimates believe that between 50 and 70 million people may have died during the course of the war, with more than 50% being civilians. More than 73,000 Americans remain unaccounted for. Approximately 3% of the world's population died.
On this day, we stand here to honor and recognize each and every one of Fordson's fallen war veterans. These veterans show us the true meaning of bravery and courage. I would now like to speak about one veteran in particular to represent the extent of Fordson's fallen veterans who went into the war under the principles of strength and honor. Finbar A. Nagel, involved in the Navy during World War II, grew up on Calhoun Street. Nagel was very passionate for his country and was consistent with the mindset of defending his fellow American people. He was only 18 years old when he died in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on a sinking ship. Nagel lost his life on January 27, 1944, a year and a half before the war's end. Thank you.
Will the students representing those that Fordson lost please rise and leave the auditorium? Is that a thing? Are you doing that?
Yeah. Okay. So World War II.
World War II, I'm sorry. Representing World War II. The Korean War began in 1950 when North Korea invaded South Korea in order to promote communism. There were 26 deaths from Dearborn, 36,574 in total. The battle death toll for all involved soldiers in the war was 1.2 million. there was an estimated 2.5 million civilian deaths. There are more than 7,800 American soldiers still unaccounted for from the Korean War. An armistice was signed July 27, 1953. There has never been a peace treaty, so the Korean War has never technically ended.
An important Fordson student who will always remain in our memories, John Fox. His service was exhibited during the Korean War as a member of the 31st Infantry Regiment in the 7th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army. He was born in 1931 and raised in Dearborn, Michigan, Wayne County. He graduated from Fordson in 1949, and a couple years later he was ranked as a private second-class soldier. His specialty as a light weapons infantry leader included responsibility in technical and tactical training, health, welfare, and physical fitness of his 5 soldiers. This also includes the responsibility for the timely and accurate fire support of combat operation. After only 2 years in action, Fox died at the age of 22 as a result of a wound received in action in North Korea on January 12 of 1953. For his audacious role, he has received prestigious awards, some including the Purple Heart, the Combat Infantryman's Badge, and the Korean Service Medal. Thank you.
Will the students representing those that Fordson lost during the Korean War please rise and leave the auditorium? The United States first entered the Vietnam War with combat troops in 1965, but there had been long-time violence in Vietnam for many years. Nearly 9 million United States troops worldwide served during the Vietnam War, with 3.4 million serving in Southeast Asia. There were 69 deaths during the Vietnam War from Dearborn. 58,300 men and women lost their lives. 1,620 soldiers remain unaccounted for. There were approximately 1 million civilian deaths. South Vietnam surrendered on April 30th, 1975. The final U.S. deaths in Vietnam occurred 2 weeks later.
William Pierce was an extraordinary man, to say the least. He graduated from Fordson in 1966, and during his time here, he played football, basketball, wrestling, and swimming. He was drafted just a few months after his graduation and was assigned to Company A, 1st Battalion. He then went to Vietnam as a replacement unit for a team suffering heavy losses. It was near the Cambodian border in Vietnam where Private First Class William Pierce was ambushed. He was wounded in the attack, but instead of retreating to seek help, he rushed to the aid of his fellow soldier. He was then injured again, this time critically. He was 19 years old when he died, and for his heroic actions, he received a Silver Star. William Pierce is now buried at Grand Lawn Cemetery in Detroit. Thank you.
Will the students representing those that Fordson lost during the Vietnam War please rise and leave the auditorium? Now that these students have left, you see 118 empty seats that were once filled with young, vibrant lives. The loss of these young men and women left a lasting impact on Fordson High School and on the city of Dearborn.
Thank you, Mrs. Lark. I'd now like to call to the podium Mr. Green.
First, I'd like to say on behalf of the Dearborn Allied War Veterans Council, Stephen Fletcher's commander, thank you for inviting the council to be part of this great tradition. We at the Dearborn Allied are proud to see that our educators and young minds have not forgotten those that have walked the halls of this school and laid down their lives for this great country. Last year, I was here at this event, and I was struck by the emotion of the program, a program that shows the true nature of loss that a community has endured because of war. I was also struck by the humble words of our honorable mayor, of a story he told of a friend that he lost to the war as well. So, with that, know that there is a special sadness that accompanies the death of a serviceman, for we're not quite good enough for them. Not really. We can't be, because what they gave us is beyond our powers to repay. And so, when a serviceman dies, it's a tear in the fabric, a break in the whole. And all we can do is remember. It is in a way an odd thing to honor those who died in defense of our country, in defense of us, in wars far away. Our imagination plays tricks on us because we see these soldiers in our own mind as old and wise. We see them something like the Founding Fathers, brave and gray-haired, but most of them were young men and women, close to your own ages. When they died, they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands, wives, fathers, mothers, grandfathers, and grandmothers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men and women. They gave up everything for our country, for me, and for you. We owe them a debt of gratitude that we can never repay. And we can do, like we are today, is remember them and what they did and why they had to be brave for us. To all those that have paid the ultimate price for freedom and those that were willing to, I say thank you. So this holiday weekend, please remember that this day is not about the living veteran, but those that have passed on, either in the line of duty or their candle expired because it was their time. So when you happen to come across a veteran this weekend, don't just thank them for their service, but let them know that you have not forgotten the ultimate sacrifice that was given to ensure our freedoms. As we move forward this Memorial Day holiday, enjoy your freedoms, enjoy your democracy, but above all, remember those that gave these to you, and thank you for having me here today. God bless you, God bless Dearborn, and God bless America.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I would now like to call to the stage or to the podium Mr. Hussein Berry.
Good morning. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank your principal, Mr. Yamal Kadre, your assistant principal, Mr. Birch, Ms. Jacqueline Zayden, Ms. Nufaila Haidar, Ms. Leila Beydoun, and all others who contributed to this event. So thank you. Let's recognize them, please. And I've been trying to get community members to engage in this ceremony. So at this time, I'd like to recognize community member and decorated war veteran, Mr. Khalil Zahir, military imam, Roxanne McDonald, and all other veteran family members. If you can stand up, be recognized, please. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's been said often, but bears repeating, freedom is not free. The wall of gold stars at the National World War II Memorial bears a field of 400 gold stars, set in stone, each star representing over 1,000 lives lost in World War II. Think about that. That's over 400,000 lives lost in just World War II alone. Memorials in Dearborn include plaques, artistic works, parks, and street names to honor our fallen heroes. The The best tribute in the great city of Dearborn is Dearborn's Veterans Park and War Memorial located in front of the Henry Ford Centennial Library, bearing the names of every Dearborn resident who gave the ultimate sacrifice, his or her life, serving in the armed forces during World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. At Fordson High School, today, we pay tribute to those students who died while serving in the United States Armed Forces, who gave the ultimate sacrifice fighting for freedom in faraway lands. All these heroes have earned our gratitude and will never, never be forgotten for their noble sacrifices. I'm going to break away here from my words of thoughts here, and I want to hold a moment of silence for all of our veterans who have lost their lives, their family members, and especially my good friend John Wazlowski, who actually played a big role in starting the ceremony. My friend John lost his wife just a few days ago, so please, let's honor all those who have passed before us with a moment of silence. Thank you. Again, freedom is not free. May God bless each and every one of you, and bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. We would now like to participate in the taps of the retiring of the colors. Thank you. In preparing for this ceremony, I learned a great deal about one of the many points of pride connected to the legacy of Fordson High School. To start, I learned that every year around Memorial Day, Mr. John Wazlowski would made it his duty to visit the grave sites of fallen soldiers from the Dearborn area, placing at each site an American flag in recognition of their service. In 2011, when he arrived at Porth Park, he noticed that the plaque of the rock that he visited each year was missing. He was deeply disturbed by this. He contacted Mr. Berry to see what may be done to help restore this piece of history. Through research and many discussions, they discovered that the memorial rock was placed at Porth Park in 1949 in honor of Marine PFC Walter Caleb, a graduate of Fordson High School. So instead of simply replacing the plaque, they decided to commemorate his legacy by restoring the memorial rock and moving it to the location where it would be safe, right here at his alma mater, Fordson High School. There are so many places in and around this glorious building that could have showcased this distinguished representation of history. Deciding on the most appropriate location took a great deal of consideration and collaboration. Principal Yusuf Masalam, Mr. Roslowski, and Mr. Berry decided that the best place for the rock that memorialized the strength, the pride, the dedication, and resilience of Marine PFC Walter Caleb would be on the football field, where all these virtues are cultivated season after season. His legacy is forever conjoined with the pride, tradition, and legacy of Fordson High School. Mr. Whiston, our former superintendent, Mayor John O'Reilly, and the city of Dearborn worked to move the rock from Porth Park to Fordson High School, and it happened in a matter of weeks. From there, the planning began for the first dedication of to all the fallen soldiers of Fordson High School. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the 2017 Fordson Memorial Day ceremony, and thank you for attending this tribute to all those that kept this nation safe. Thank you. I would also like to recognize our judge, Gene Hunt, for attending today's event. I'd also like to recognize our student body for attending this event. It's a very special event and ceremony to be a part of, and I'm glad that you got an opportunity to be a part of this as well as myself. Thank you for attending, you guys.